Hey guys, welcome to the Together for Good podcast, your guide into the real and inspired marriage and life adventure that you never knew was possible. I'm Meredith Osterhaus, the daughter of your hosts, Dan and Melodie Griffin. Mom and Dad's teaching, stories, and experiences with lots of laughing mixed in will move you to make your marriage last, all while making a difference in the world around you. Are you ready? Here we go!
Well, hey friends, so glad that you're with us for this podcast, Together for Good. I'm Melodie.
And I'm Dan. We are excited not only about today's topic, but we're in the middle of a series called What Now? So all of these, you've had crisis moments before. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Crisis moments that sometimes become crisis seasons.
That's right. Because you start doubling down on it, right?
And
we're joined by our friends Chris and Bridget Winston and Zach and Lindsay Farrar. Today's conversation is about, we're overdrawn again. What now?
It's never happened to us, but we've thought of people that it has happened
in the last
to.
48 hours. So I was sharing with our friends here around the table. This is probably the one topic that we're going to talk about that I'm most uncomfortable because we're going to be a little vulnerable here. This is an area that we've struggled with our entire marriage. Mm-hmm. And we can go into a lot of the reasons behind it, job loss, emergencies, and I could
special needs, health care,
but
also we just don't adult very well.
Well, we're both very spontaneous.
We are.
We're both very spontaneous. If you look at our temperament and personality,
right.
We're both high I. If you look at a disc, so we like to wing it. It's our spiritual gift. So the
we
problem
are here
is
to receive help.
So yeah,
we've actually made some incredible progress.
God has been good, but at the same time, I'm 52. We'll be 53 in several months.
That's true. Speak for yourself.
Well, there's a lot of. I am speaking for myself. There are a lot of challenges that come with that, right?
Sure.
So how do we prepare for the future? How do I prepare for special needs children? How do I prepare to make sure if I got hit by a bus that my family's taken care of? So there's all of these things that are out there. You may be able to respond to this, as you're listening. I remember specifically, Melodie and I. Jonathan was born. How old was I when Jonathan was born? How old were you?
I was 24.
24, so I was 26. Jonathan was born with Down syndrome. 3 months after his birth, Jonathan contracted RSV, which is a respiratory virus, and it immediately turned into something called atelectasis, which was almost like pneumonia. His lungs were shutting down. So Jonathan immediately is going into hospital after hospital after hospital, was in a pediatric ICU
Revolving
unit.
door.
Our insurance plan that we had, it just so happened that one of the deductibles that some genius came up with, we'll not go any further than that on that, but each first night in the hospital was one of your deductibles. So every stay, as he was transferred to 3 different hospitals in this, Jonathan that was a deductible. One of those was a pediatric ICU unit. So when we took Jonathan home, we were looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of about a $30,000 hospital bill. Now this was, 25 years ago
And
plus.
what were we paying on it a month? Remember,
I had one hospital I was paying $20 a month. And I make a note for yourself. Most hospitals, they won't let you get away with $20 now.
They won't.
But seriously, if you can negotiate it down, if you're paying something, they will leave you alone. So there's a lot of things that you can learn with that. But that put us behind the 8 ball from the beginning, and then we started to double down on our bad decisions.
He doesn't mean we double down in a good way. Like, we're going to fix this. No, let's make more.
Yeah. And in talking around the table already, I've learned that that's not uncommon. That a lot of times when you get in a hole, it gets deeper. It's transportation. It's housing. It's just
can't win for losing, you feel like.
And so that's our story. And so we know that this is a really, really big deal in marriages. And so how can you begin? We're not going to answer and solve all of those problems tonight, but we can start with where do you start? And so tell me about a time, go bring our friends in now. Lindsay, Zach, tell me about a time where you had a financial crisis, and what did it, more important than the crisis, I'm more interested in how did you respond, especially to each other?
Sure.
Can I share?
I think I know the one you're going to do. Taxes?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so.
Uh-oh.
So, for the first 4.5 years of our marriage, I was a pastor, and so if you don't know clergy, they file their your taxes are filed differently. And if you use TurboTax, there's this little box you're supposed to check that I didn't check. Not 1 year, but 2 years in a row.
And there were some withholdings.
And so there with
his employment that
they didn't communicate well. They didn't teach how to do it. And so 1 year we get this notice from the IRS that we may have underpaid. Not a problem. It's like, this is too big of a headache. I take it to a CPA. Mm-hmm. He does our taxes, and I go in. We thought we owed $1,500. We owed over $7,000. So there was no $30,000. You got me beat. But this is a family with.
I was staying home with our son at the time.
I'm on a minister's salary.
Which, in case you don't know, is not like
right. and
it
was at a smaller church, so naturally, at a smaller business, your healthcare is going to be not as robust.
Right.
And so along with that, there are some very specific medical needs in our family that cause some expenses.
I'm a type 1 diabetic, so
we were debt free at the time, except for our house.
Wow.
So we're thinking we're doing great, and we're making really great choices and great decisions, but we've got our budget managed to
one little box
the penny.
Can just
we looked at a lot of things, and the long and the short of it is I ended up getting a second job. So I worked 3 nights a week at a hospital as a orderly. So I took out garbage and stuff at the ER.
Wow.
But to his credit, I think you had it paid off in
We paid it off within 6 months, but some of that was we decided to pay off. Some of it was savings, which we had saved up, and then a lot of this other job. But it was stressful because in our marriage we went from, by the nature of my job, I wasn't home a couple nights a week to 5 or 6 nights a week we weren't together because we had this huge debt we had to take care of. And the IRS isn't like a hospital. Like, they're going to get their money and they're going to get it when they want it.
Right. And was there any initial emotional gunfire that happened with you guys?
I will say the thing that was very surprising to me, and it comes from a difference in our backgrounds and the way that we handle crisis situations, I guess. So Zach comes home and is like,
I had a 6-pack of beer.
There's an
I
answer.
was like, before we get started, have one of these.
That was your first
I don't remember that. But
I couldn't afford it, but we're starting here.
But he sat me down and he's like, take a deep breath. I mean, he's basically in tears.
I was so upset at myself.
He was like, if you need to take a night away, I understand. Before he's even telling me what's going on, and I'm like,
what did you do?
Who did you kill?
You were almost relieved when he told
I'm
you.
like, what? And then he starts talking about the taxes, and I was like, we owe $30,000. And then he's like, we owe $7,000. And I was like, oh. Okay. But the way that I think, for him, this catastrophic thing for me, I was like, okay, well, we'll figure it out. We're going to work on it together. He was expecting a lot of anger, I think, from me. And that's just not how I handle those situations.
Now, had he been flippant about it, may have made you
that
angry.
might have been
You know what I mean?
response.
He really owned it.
Yeah. And again, within a week, he has found himself a second job after the job that he already worked 60 hours a week at.
Yeah,
He's found a second job working nights, cleaning up trash and poop. So I'm like, how do you get angry at that?
Right?
Huh?
But by the way, having also had IRS, can I tell you something I've learned? If you've got an IRS problem, call them. Mm-hmm. They will work with you.
Mm-hmm.
I remember. So
They are. I mean, everybody fears oh my God. I think it's the commercials that we see. They're gonna take your check. They're gonna. If you call them,
you got to communicate.
They will work with you.
So it was funny. So we start getting the notices start coming in once we refile our taxes. Mm-hmm. And one of them, I kid you not, we owed the IRS $2 for 1 year.
Oh my goodness!
And so I was like, all right, we're paying this.
Somebody played that one pretty.
Yeah, we're Dave Ramsey, right? We're starting with the smallest one, and then we're working. And so I got my first paycheck from the hospital. I was getting ready to write a check for $2, and I get another notice from the IRS. It's like, and it's not worth it. So they forgave. I mean, I still
forgave
owed
your $2.
Right.
Oh,
so we owed $6,998, but still.
They wasted 2 cents on, they wasted
$2
the stamps
postage
on
it was
2 notices.
Wow.
That's amazing.
It
What a
was
story.
well, and distant season of life, and like early 20s, unless you're like a neurosurgeon or something like right out of college, you typically don't make a lot of money right out of college.
Right.
You probably have student loan debt now, one salary, young kid. So like we had to figure it out, but there was the reason it was so hard for us is like there was no extra money.
Mm-hmm.
There was no margin. There wasn't $20 a month we could throw at I think our
we
food
didn't-
budget was $160 a month
Oh,
Wow.
for 3 of us. And that is what we had.
It was we were on. I mean, our budget. We didn't have cable. We didn't have gym
had
memberships. We
nothing.
didn't have. So I think that's where it was overwhelming to start with because it wasn't like, oh, well, we just give up these 3 things and
Yeah.
that's
It's
half
half
of
of
what
what
we
we have
owe.
to tighten.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
But we did have a budget, and we were used to living on
My salary,
restricted
right,
things
yeah.
on his salary. So we had the ability. I think I was substituting at the time. We had avenues that we could quickly go to.
Yeah. All of that to say, it was stressful.
Yeah.
We didn't double down in a bad way. I think
Right.
we,
Yeah.
after a couple days of shock, we found something and then we made a plan and we worked it.
I think
amazing.
wise counsel had told Zach just give it a week to sleep on it. Just give it a week, and within 24 hours he had us
I did.
All the goals.
Yeah, Melody, how has the financial struggles, how has that affected me?
I mean, legit, hard, really hard, because it would take the wind completely out of your sails. And I can't speak for your feelings, but the impression I got was that you felt like a loser sometimes if we would have a financial problem. I should do better than this. I should be a better provider. I should be more of an adult. And then you would accidentally take it out on me. You talk about doubling down. I was your biggest cheerleader, but you were so stressed and you were so worried that I was in close proximity and I would, catch it. So yeah, huge part of some hard times.
Yeah.
In our lives. And you very much wanting to control it. If I'm better, if I'm smarter, and I can remember us talking, if I may be at liberty to say, I can remember several times I would say, can we please just go talk to somebody? Can we go? And you would be like, no, I've got a new plan, or no, I've got, because I understand that was too vulnerable for you.
Yeah.
That was admitting defeat somehow, or something.
There's a part of me right now that feels like I'm running through the mall naked.
Sure.
Which is healthy, by the way. Not running through the mall naked.
They're mostly.
It's okay.
Clarify that.
They don't recommend it.
52-year-old man.
We have several malls here. They're probably perfectly fine. But it may even be the norm. But it just, like you say, it feels so vulnerable and it feels so...
Exposed.
Yeah. And you just shouldn't be here. So then you start panicking, and it's never a good place to be to make that next decision when you're in panic mode. It just never ends well there. Chris, you and Bridget, how did you guys get into doing financial peace? What's the story?
And you've done it you've taught it off and on for how long?
20
You've done
years.
it
20 years
That's
off
amazing.
and on.
Before we were married.
Before we were married, I got
wow.
a call. I was working at a newspaper and got a call from a local class, and they wanted us to come cover it for the newspaper. And so I started going as part of something I was writing for the newspaper we were both working for at the time. And I think I went by myself the first week to the class, and I sat around the room with a lot of people who were a lot older than I was, who were having a lot of financial problems, looking at retirement, not sure how they were going to be able to pull that off. And they were looking at me as a 24, 25-year-old going, you guys...
Listen to us now.
Listen to
Yeah.
us. They were like from beyond not the grave. They were very much with us, and I hope they still are. But they were like, if you listen to this, if you pay attention to this now, it will change your life. And I think by week 2 or 3, Bridget was coming with me to some of those weeks.
And tell them how they ended each class, or the what they said in their prayer at the end of each
well,
class.
we rebuked the devourer every single week. I mean, they were very
Devourer.
Rebuke the devourer.
We were meeting at a church in a strip mall. They were lovely people in Spartanburg, South Carolina, who were very wanting to do it the right way, wanting to be on the same page financially, and most of them had not been for their entire marriages.
Wow.
And you saw it caused a lot of problems and a lot of strife in their marriages. And I realized that if we could get that right then, as mid-20s before we were married, we wouldn't see many of those issues.
Right.
And that's been a huge God gift to us for 20 years. Is we've had very few financial fights about the theories of finance. The practice of it, obviously, we have disagreements.
You bought what?
Yeah, a lot of that. And text in the middle of the day, like you're at your favorite sushi restaurant. What about that budget? So things like that still happen, but we understand that we have the theory of how we want to run our family financially.
Yeah.
We are on the same page of every single day for the last 20 years, and that's been a huge gift.
It's amazing.
Wow, and what a great gift to your boys to see that and to see the payoff, right? So you've set them up for that as well.
And we've very much been conscientious about talking about these things in front of them and with them, and not being afraid of it, not letting them be afraid of it.
Yeah,
Understanding those family lessons, understanding what your background, how you were brought up, and how those
It's
things.
huge. It is huge.
It's probably the number one thing. Like with any communication within a marriage, how your family of origin and how you approach it has such an impact, and you have to understand how the other. Sounds like you're both spenders. Maybe maybe lean towards that. A lot of families, you'll have a saver and a spender.
Right.
Opposites attract. Sometimes
attack.
tragically, right? So and then
Who's the saver and who's the spender?
I am the spender when it comes to
Sushi.
to small death by 1,000 cuts.
Right.
When it's a bigger thing, normally Bridget's the one who will want us to get maybe a couch. A new couch, which we saved up for 15 years and finally just got. But I'm the one who will I will violate the budget on a daily basis.
I see.
But like $8 at a time.
Yeah.
We just bonded.
$8 at a time.
It is, and that's one of the many. You can ruin a budget multiple ways.
Yeah.
You can ruin a cash flow plan. Budget often has a negative connotation. The answer, of course, is to agreeing on some sort of cash flow plan and some sort of budget. But too often you see it used as a weapon. Maybe the saver uses that as a weapon against the spender.
That's
it's
good.
Like, it's not in the budget. It's not in the budget. You can hear it today, and I've said it to our boys. We can go through go through the grocery store and want them to buy cookies or something, and you're just like, that's not in our
Not
budget.
in the budget. Not in the budget.
Not our plan. And you have to be careful. You want to bring your children on, but you don't want them to see it as something
A punishment.
Right.
or one of them using to control the other.
Chris and Bridget, you obviously have specifically done financial peace, which, unless you live under a rock, you probably know that's Dave Ramsey. Just a really smart guy who has kind of boiled some big principles down to some understandable things. But it's not specific to Dave Ramsey. That's the plan you guys have done. As we were sitting around talking about this concept, you really were kind of helping us with some of the bigger picture things that we want to agree on and prioritize. So talk us through a little bit. A lot of this is Dave Ramsey, but a lot of this is just godly wisdom about finances. So talk to us a little bit.
I would say, when you have a situation like your tax situation, or you have this gigantic hospital bill, as much as you can in that crisis moment, look at it as kind of a wake-up call and a chance to take a hard look at what you're doing and what you have been doing, and where you want to go from there.
Right.
And let it start a conversation about your priorities. Are your priorities to live your best life in retirement? Are your priorities to live your best life right now? Are your priorities to be able to have a parent come back and live with you if they need to? Are your priorities to be ridiculously generous and just give away a ton of money? So what are your kind of big priorities for spending and saving? Do you value family vacations, and you want to take a family vacation every year no matter what? And what does that mean on the flip side? What what sacrifices may you have to make? Maybe you can't have a brand new car and a family vacation every year. And so what are your priorities, and what are and find your common ground there, because there are going to be places where you don't agree. Where one's going to be a spender and one's going to be a saver. One's going to be into instant gratification and one's going to be into delayed gratification. And so it can be just a good chance to.
How did you guys navigate that? How did you negotiate that on the relationship level?
Well, I'd say when we first started this, we were engaged and we knew that we wanted me to be able to stay home when we had kids. And so one of the first things we did was figure out if we can live on one salary. And so for the first 2 years that we were married, we were putting my salary away entirely and just living on his to see if that was even doable.
Yep.
And
I know Zach and Lindsay, you guys have done that as well.
We did the exact same thing.
I heard that as a college student in a psychology class. I don't know why my professor said it, but she shared that that's what she and ours did. And I was like, that's so smart.
It is.
Because obviously, I mean, I was a teacher, Zach was a preacher. Those are not, you don't get into those for the money.
Right.
And so the first year that I taught, we practiced that.
Yeah.
The first year we were married, I was finishing a degree, and so was he, but we had saved the money for it before we got married. The next year, we were pregnant with Josiah, but I was teaching, so we banked my entire paycheck and kind of practiced living off of that. But then we had my paycheck to cover, these expenses that were kind of coming up that were extra but weren't our main budget. And I was just so grateful somebody dropped that nugget. I'd never heard that before, but I was like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense.
And it sounds really easy. I don't know if you guys will get into this, but it's actually really hard because we had a lot of friends who, substantial income for both of them, whatever their career paths were.
They waited a bit longer.
They waited a little bit longer to get
so
married.
got
Also,
5 or
and
6
so they would,
years.
go out to dinner together 2-3 times a week. Or like when we were engaged, like all I could afford was McDonald's, right? So like we would go on a date to McDonald's, and at one point, her mom was like, "Is he ever going to take you somewhere nice, like Chick-fil-A?"
I was like, "Stop it, Mom! I know why he's taking me to McDonald's."
I was saving for her
It's like,
wedding ring.
I know why. We're okay.
But
I will
nice
take
like
McDonald's.
Chick-fil-A.
Right, there's so much advice that sounds like, well, no, duh.
Right.
But then the reality is when you actually start applying it, it makes you a little bit of an oddball.
Yes, and you have to get
not the norm.
over. You have to get over keeping up with the Joneses, and you have to get over like our society of instant gratification. And we had that moment too. We worked together, and we had a big social group of people who all worked at the newspaper together, and would go out to lunch every day. And we decided we needed to stop that. We needed to pack our lunch or go home for lunch. And the first day we said, no, I think we said it's not in our budget. And one of our friends said, "Well, I'll cover you." And we had to stop and say, "Well, no, it's not just today. This is like."
All
change,
the time.
right?
Yeah.
We are changing the way we do things, and so it's countercultural for sure.
Yes, it is. Yes,
But
it
it's
is.
because of your priority.
Right.
It's the bigger picture.
You
I wanted
knew
to
what
be
the
able to
bigger
stay home
yes
with
was.
Josiah.
Yeah.
So
Right, but we live
made the
in-
sacrifice. And
Yeah. And we live in such a culture of affluence, right?
Right.
Everyone has disposable income. So when you say no, it's not in the budget, then it immediately comes like a lot of times the immediate response is everything okay? Like
Yeah.
right? And so and then as a man or as a woman, you want to be like, no, like we're fine.
Yeah.
Like, I can pay my bills. I can take care of myself. We just determine, but you feel like your ability to provide for yourself is being questioned. You're like, no, I don't want to go spend $20 again
Right.
Yeah.
on tacos again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to your point, Melody, earlier about it's really a lot of old school common sense wisdom. Your problem may be an income problem or it may be an outgo problem, right? So when Zach and Lindsay had the kind of mini crisis you guys had early on, you fixed it by increasing the income. Sometimes you have to go the other way and worry about the outgo.
That's good.
So you have to figure that out first. And then I know, Dan, you like saying with how you spend your day in your day planner, really showcase your priorities. I think Dave likes to say that your checkbook and your day planner.
right.
You show me those two
That's
things,
right.
and I will show you where your
it's
priorities
important.
are. And it sometimes takes a budget committee, your family getting together and sitting down and looking and saying, this is how much is coming in. What do we want to spend it on? What has to go out? What bills do we have that we can't change on? Do we want to scale back the cable this month? Are we going to increase this? How are we going to spend it? What are we going to agree to? But the very first thing, before you think about debt, if you're trying to get out of debt or whatever you're trying to accomplish, is a small emergency fund, an amount of money, because if you start in this process and you just start the budgeting process, you will have a flat tire. You will have a card issue. Something will go just to mess around with you.
The devourer.
The devourer.
The devourer.
Okay.
Yes.
I rebuke the devourer.
An emergency fund can rebuke the devourer.
Indeed, they will. The devourer will leave your transmission alone. If you have $500 or $1,000 set aside and you're not messing with, and you both know. And again, that goes back to that security. That goes back to maybe one of you feels a lot safer and a lot more comfortable if there's money set aside there. And so that's the very first thing is having some money set aside. And then work on debt. Debt's just something that weighs down. It's very biblical. A lot of discussion about the slave, being a slave to borrow a slave to the lender, and trying to get out of debt. And we've already had to mention kind of the debt snowball is what Dave teaches, which is going smallest to largest. And
Smallest balance to largest.
Balance, to build yourself some momentum, to show you're accomplishing things, to get bills taken care of and get debt taken care of. And then as you're working through that, you're able to find other resources to go back and finish off an emergency fund. Because as we discussed in other times, sometimes your finances, your income, your job may not be as stable as we all like to wish it was. So having 3 or 6 months set aside of your expenses is a great way to prepare for something inevitable that might happen. Of a job loss or a job change or a move that happens to you.
Or an illness or anything else.
Here's what, and again, this is, I think, from a cognitive, critical thinking point, all that makes perfect sense. That's not my problem.
Correct.
What is it that derails people from what you guys have seen and working hands-on with them? What do you see that derails them from being able to get there?
I'll tell you, even after teaching financial peace 5 or 6 times and living by these principles all our lives, we still occasionally bounce a check. And that happens when we are spread thin in other areas, when we're busy, when we're being pulled in different directions, when there's, a problem or a crisis in another area of our life. And so we're not paying attention. Right. We're not keeping our thumbs on our budget and on our accounts, and it surprises us. And so I think that's probably very common that, you're going along doing the right things and you've got a good rhythm going and you've got a good cash flow plan. And then, I can't remember who it was, but somebody in one of our classes said that they had their first baby. And when they came home, they completely forgot how to do the rest of their life for a month. They forgot.
That'll do it.
I can totally see that happening. You're so wrapped up in the baby and this new lifestyle.
I can only do one thing well.
Right.
Now it's the baby.
And paying bills this month is not it. And so they got hit with all the late fees and everything the next month. So just, kind of being aware of that if there's something else going on in your life that may kind of derail you. But we have found that when we're organized with our money, we are organized in other areas of our life too. It helps us plan out when we're going to get an oil change and when we're going to do this project around the house and when we're going to, shop for Christmas presents and that, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's always fascinating to me. So, I had an emergency. I had a flat tire. Well, tires go flat.
Right.
That's really not.
And you know what else is not an emergency? Christmas.
Yeah.
It comes every year. Every year.
I mean, it's
birthdays.
Back to school comes every year.
And so, would you agree with me? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Tell me a little bit in your experience of seeing couple after couple, different ages, different life seasons. They come to a position when they're like, okay, all right, we're going to do this. What are the varying circumstances that you see that bring people to a point of, let's do this. Let's get our finances in order. What are some of the circumstances that you've seen?
There are a couple. Obviously, a drop in your income, maybe a job loss or a job change, it dramatically affects your income. For me, it's honestly during tax season every year because you add up how much money you brought in last year.
How ironic.
And you look around and you go, we brought in that amount and where did it go?
What happened to that?
What happened to that? What did we spend that on? For me, it went to little pieces of sushi every day, the sushi place. So, it's just, we didn't go on some grand trip. We didn't make some big gift. We didn't donate a ton of money or give to our church. it went out through these little bitty bites and pieces, and we don't. So I think that's another one.
Yeah.
A third one is just reaching a point where they just really have it's become a marital problem for them.
Yeah.
Because one of them doesn't understand why they're in the financial shape they were, and maybe they were unaware until recently the other spouse let them in. To a problem or situation.
Right, and you get that situation when one spouse is handling the finances entirely rather than collaborating on it.
Yeah,
Right.
full disclosure.
And sometimes maybe, and it can be a sign in some cases of other problems going
Right.
on. There may be
Sure.
a gambling, maybe something,
Right.
there may be a side credit card that not both
some
members
some
know
kind
about.
of hiding.
Yeah.
Some sort of
Something.
hiding,
Yeah.
and suddenly it comes to light, and suddenly
Right.
you have a crisis of whatever the relationship
Yep.
is,
Yep.
and whatever is going on, and you also have a financial crisis on top
both
of those
and.
other ones.
Talk about what now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come out doubling down on dumb.
Yeah.
Right.
And again, guilty.
Yeah.
So I'm not throwing rocks at those that find themselves in that spot.
And we've also seen people come looking for help or a better way when they're at the point where retirement is looming, or their kids going to college is looming, or
life events.
life events, or their parents are aging and they know they're going to need to help them.
I think for our age group, it's when you start having kids. Maybe you've got married young and you've had 5 or 6, 7 years where you get to live off both incomes and you're totally free, and then all of a sudden you have that sweet little baby staring back at you and you're like,
Oh, you're expensive.
wait, I have to I was gonna say you have to drop them off at daycare every day, and that hurts.
Yes.
But also they're expensive. But I think that at least we've seen for some friends, I think it brings up the conversation of, wait, I want to stay home. Doesn't feel good
Right.
to drop you off every day. I don't.
Yeah.
I thought this would be okay, but now it's not.
Yeah, even for
So what do we do about that? And
And you
that's
also see people early in their marriage wanting to or expecting to live the same lifestyle that their parents have.
Oh,
yes.
Which they
Preach
have
on that for a
Preach
minute,
it.
please. Preach it.
Yeah,
Clear off the spot.
Right. So 25 years into your marriage, hopefully you have come up from the entry-level job. Hopefully you've gotten a few raises along the way. Hopefully you've made some good decisions about investing and saving.
You're now eating at Chick-fil-A instead of McDonald's.
right. You
McDonald's.
step
there's
up
some days
from
we still
the-
eat
off the
McDonald's.
dollar menu.
and at that point your kids are high school, college, starting their own careers.
Yeah.
And there's a tendency to step out into the world and think, this
Yes.
is what I came from, this is what I should get. And I think that causes a lot of
frustration.
Frustration
and bad habits.
Ooh,
frustration, bad
boy.
habits, and
It's-
trying to again keep up with the Joneses, and they see their friends doing it, and
They do, but it also comes back to us as parents. We've got, we have a child that's married now, and so you want to tell them all the things when they're getting married, and I think that was something that we felt very responsible to tell them is, hey, they wanted to get married young, we got married young, and we're like, listen, we can tell you it's going to be hard, you're going to love it, but it's going to be hard, and I think it's important that we clear off that spot and say, we've been married a long time and we've worked hard for this, and you'll get there, but it does not happen.
Yeah.
One of the funny stories for us, so when Zach and I were engaged, we had a long distance engagement, and again, preacher and a teacher. I was doing my student teaching the first 6 months we were
Pastor,
married.
preacher makes me sound like it.
Well, it just rhymes. It
preacher
sounds
and
better.
teacher, yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
cute.
So I was working part time doing some childcare, but I wasn't working full time.
I forgot you did that. I blocked that out.
Wish I could. But my looking for housing in the area, I mean, it was kind of expensive, and Zach found some friends' dad had a trailer on his property, and it was like dirt cheap, and it was small, but it was cheap.
400
It
square
was-
feet, baby.
And
Wow.
and it was my mom was like, no daughter of mine is living in a trailer. I was like, watch me.
Oh man, I felt
we
like
gonna make this cute. It's gonna be real good. And
I
you know-
remember the first time her parents came down, just like the reality of this is my daughter's life.
The shock.
But
Like,
listen.
yeah, it is, Bets.
But listen,
And her mother's fantastic. They took it with a lot of grace, but it was like,
Yeah.
you're like,
Well, I
we
told
are
her
living in
that
a
it's hard to see
trailer
your kids do
where
it,
you
yeah.
can literally like put your finger on parts of the door, and there's no door there. It's just the air outside. Like,
it wasn't that
Sounds
bad.
real safe.
No, it was. There was that little diamond window. It didn't seal right, and so in the winter you'd be like, "It's cooler over here." Oh yeah.
There's a hole in the door.
Point being, we made it really cute. There's first of all, there's something really special about that. Like, oh, do you remember that really crappy trailer?
I know, and I want to
With,
go back
like,
and say. Now you're like, man,
with
we need
no
to be really fun to go
dishwasher.
back and see it. And,
But I
Builds
not
character. It
really.
all builds character.
I told my mom, I said, the goal is that we can buy a house. Like the goal is this. 90% of the furniture in our house is hand-me-down. Still,
Yeah.
we have 2 kids. First of all, they're going to destroy it. I don't care.
Right.
Second of all, it was free. There's no need for me to go out and spend all of this money. So anyway, it was just
But that goes back to your priorities,
Yeah.
like Chris was talking
The
about.
priorities-
You knew what what
Yes.
was important to
Yeah.
you.
I wanted us to be able to buy a house. We knew we wanted to have kids fairly quickly. We didn't want to wait 5 years. So we knew we didn't want to have a baby in the trailer. So what do we have to sacrifice? What do we have to do to get there? And I knew my parents' standard of living, my dad was a 30-year military vet. My mom had worked for, was getting ready to retire. I can't expect to live
Yeah.
in a $250,000 house on the, it just wasn't
Some
where we're
newlyweds
at yet.
do, but good that
Some-
you
some
knew
do.
that. I mean, good that you knew that. Well, I mean, some people
Yeah.
expect to.
That wasn't where we were,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I recognized that sometimes you have to pay some dues, and there's some beauty in it because of the lessons you have to learn about budgeting and finance and sacrifice
And
for what
that's-
you want later.
I think that's a key point, Lindsay, as to the lessons that you learned that you're now carrying with you. I want to shift the conversation just a smidge to what about those folks that aren't young and they didn't make the good decisions?
You read my mind.
Yeah.
When they were young, basically Dan and Melody. So that now they're in their they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s. First of all, can you recover?
Right.
It's
so
never too late to start. Start where you are.
you can only start where you are. You know,
Right.
a lot of people listen to somebody like Dave Ramsey and go, "Thanks, Dave. That was great advice for the 25-year-old." Thanks a lot for rubbing that in.
I have
Now
no
I'm
rewind
45 or I'm
button. Yeah.
55.
Yeah.
You can only start where you are.
Don't throw up your hands and say, "Well, I didn't start when I was 20, so
Right.
why bother
It's
now?"
pointless.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's always a great time to make sure your dollars, your income have names, that you know what they're going to, that you have shared priorities, and you're dedicated to work together on it. I think Bridget and I, sometimes it's easy for a couple to leave the financial decisions in the hand of that one money manager. Somebody's going to enjoy an Excel file, or somebody's going to enjoy managing
literally what we have.
and the other one's not going to.
Yeah.
And the other one's, but it's so important for the other one to be part of the budget
Right.
committee.
Sure.
And to
gotta be
come
buy-in.
together. And so no matter what that age is, figure out what your priorities are for 5 years from now, for 10 years from now, for 15, and make your money work for you, and make all your hard work for you. As you move forward towards that goal, no matter what your age or situation.
Go ahead, Bridget.
And I was going to say about whether you call it a cash flow plan or a budget, there is no perfect version that comes down from heaven and works every month. We revise it every month based on, this month we have
every month's different.
right
Really?
back to school. We have back to school expenses this month. In November and December we have Christmas, and March and
Birthdays.
April we have taxes.
So school me in a perfect world when it's working. Do you guys sit down? I don't know how people do this. Do you sit down on the first day of every month?
well, we do it over GChat.
Oh,
To reference another conversation.
yes, you guys missed that conversation.
We have a shared Google Doc
Okay.
that we keep our budget in, and the way we do it is we both get paid every other Friday, but they're alternating Fridays. So
Oh, that's
Oh,
awesome.
that's very
that is
good.
that's the best.
That's
I mean, and we
incredible.
had
There's always money there. That is the dream.
Always money going out.
Yeah.
we have had every other scenario. I mean, for a long time I worked on a freelance basis, and it was
Yeah.
completely unpredictable.
Never
I got
knew
paid
that.
once a month when I
Yeah.
worked somewhere. It was, and so literally the first of the month you felt like a king, and then by like the 13th you're like, we have $12.
Yeah.
$12.
I'm with you in the fact the last 10 years I am the poster child for the gig economy, right? And so there are a lot of people that have still stuck around in my shoes, right? We go through the worst economy of our lifetime, and so they just did what they had to do. So I get that.
Yeah.
And it's hard to create a cash flow plan when you don't know what your cash flow is going to be.
Right.
So any thoughts for those folks?
I think the best thing to do is to guess as close as you can.
Yeah.
Conservatively.
Again, conservatively
Yes.
each month go and say, I'm going to pay now, and maybe in 2 or 3 months where I get paid again. How long does this last? I think my advice would be, if you have multiple incomes to look at these stable bills that happen on the 15th of the month.
Right.
Do you have a stable income that you can maybe take care of those things? And then maybe look at something like a freelance or a gig economy basis on some of the other things. Maybe use that for your giving. Maybe use that for your savings plan. Maybe use that for wealth building.
What has helped to me is it's changed the way, and again, as a, if you will, a freelancer, it's changed the way I do my invoicing. And I have incentivized clients to pay me on basically a retainer as opposed to an hourly fee basis. So
when you take Josiah to the ER.
When they go to scan, so they put
he's
real terrified that he's gonna have he wakes up one morning, 105.6 degree fever.
Yikes.
106. It was high.
it was high.
Threw up everywhere. I'm like, okay, and it's time. His
to go to the
doctor was
hospital.
like, take him to the hospital. So we took him, and he's terrified he's gonna get a shot. He had his flu shot a couple weeks before. Terrified of a shot. First thing he says out of everybody's mouth, well, they put the little bracelet on him so that they can admit him. And the guy takes the thing and goes, he goes, don't scan me, I'm not groceries.
But he says it and he's crying.
He's sobbing.
And then later on, he's like, if I were groceries, I'd be hot dogs.
That's the best part.
All right.
Me
He's
too.
a hot mess.
All right, back at it.
No, we're good. We'll use that.
Well, the other thing, and I would caution, we talked a lot about couples who are both spenders or one who's a spender and a saver. There is a danger into having two savers too, in that you don't have any fun. So, you need to be sure that you include some fun money in your budget, that that you don't budget it down so tightly that there's no money to go out to a movie or to go out to dinner with friends. I mean, those are part of life and they're going to happen, and don't let it derail your budget. Plan ahead for it. Plan on, a date night or a day out. Especially if you're both savers.
Right. It's also a way that savers often can exact control over spenders. Right. They put it in a budget and they say there's no money for that. You need to be realistic. You need to give your spouse the love and grace to be able to say, you're going to go to sushi. All right, maybe you can go once a month instead of 14 times a month.
Yeah.
Not that I know anybody who does that. But, and so build that into the budget.
Right.
Build in that fun into it and say, there's going to be blow.
Yeah.
Bridget gets her $50 in blow. I get my $50 in blow. If I want to go to sushi, I go to sushi. If she wants to
Absolutely.
There's no strings attached to that. You don't
Right.
have to say what it's
Manicure,
for. You can
right.
spend it on what's
Yeah.
important to you.
And decide
freely.
also between, one of the early conversations is, okay, what's that dollar limit that I can spend without talking about it first?
Yes,
Very
that's
important.
very
Very
good.
important.
And that's going to be different for every couple.
Well, and early on, it's going to be low. Ours was
Right.
$20.
$20,
If you're spending
yeah.
more than $20, I got to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard
absolutely.
another. Again, we've kind of transitioned. What are just some practical things? I heard one couple where she handled the food budget, right? So groceries and stuff, and so their budget was, what was it like? Let's say it's $500, which is for easy math. I went to Carolina, so $500. If she's able to get it for $460, she gets the bonus cash.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That becomes $400 bonus cash.
Right.
What do you think about separate accounts, separate checking accounts?
That's a big question.
It's a big one, and I talk to a lot of people in my everyday life about this a lot. And I have always been a very strong believer in a shared account, a joint account. Just because I believe it's transparency, because I believe you have to agree on it. Now, if you get to if you have some money where each person is getting their own blow at some point, and you find that you'd rather that be in a debit situation, or you don't want to carry a bunch of cash around.
Right.
Put it on
in that
cash app.
situation.
That's different. Yeah.
You can do something else with it. If that has to be in another bank account, you can make that another bank account. But I believe in the shared priorities and the couple working together on it. In our suggestion, it's always been that a joint account is.
And it's less complicated that way too. If he has his account for his paycheck and we assign certain bills to him and certain bills to me in my paycheck, and I'm $20 short and he's got an extra $100, then that's transferring money and do I have to pay him back?
Right.
Like so much of this, you can come up with rationale why to do it that way.
Sure. Yeah.
But in my experience, what you find too often is it has the potential of creating more problems.
Yeah.
Right.
In the relationship
In the
specifically,
relationship, right.
I grew up. My mom and dad had separate accounts, but it was joint accounts, just like what you're talking about. Both of them were on, but they just did it for sheer convenience.
Yep.
And my mom was a stay-at-home mom, but so there was a transfer from my dad would get his check, and then money would be transferred to mom's account.
They each had access to each other's.
That's right.
They could know what was happening.
That's right. So
yeah, I think that what you're getting at though is it's trouble when our money becomes my money.
That's right.
Yes.
Right, and so we have split accounts, but we can see each other.
Yep.
Right, so every paycheck I send her cash. She knows
Just so
what
that
it's
we're
for.
not accidentally spending what the other one. So
Or
that
like
we
I
have
know I've
given
got
our
a check
budget
I'm waiting
and
to
then-
be
There's
withdrawn.
that whole overdrawn thing you
Exactly.
talked about.
So
Yeah.
we do that, but I think
it's all about communication
Yeah.
and
It is.
transparency, right?
Yeah.
I
But
mean,
it's-
isn't that really the key?
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
it's when there's
Because it's a deeper issue than just money.
yeah, because
It's about-
unfortunately, I know of the stories of the couples where they've gone out and they've created a credit card account that goes to a post office box. That how do you explain that?
Right.
There is no explanation. I mean, that's the bottom line. So
I have a question for you. So, would you say to do a budget is restricting or liberating?
For liberating. I mean, it has been for us, and because it also takes some of the guilt and anxiety away from, can I afford this pair of boots?
Yes.
My boys need clothes. They've outgrown their clothes. Can we swing that this month? It takes all of that away, and it
Yes.
reduces the stress and anxiety about it, and it lets you plan ahead for those things too.
love it.
And you talk about it, you communicate, which is so important to marriage.
And I think it's important too to remember, and budgeting helps because it forces you back to remember like it's never going to be enough, right?
Right.
Like and this is what I tell when I used to lead college groups. Like you're gonna make not a lot, and then you're gonna make a little bit more, and a little bit more, and it's never enough, right? It's never gonna be enough. The more money you make, the faster it leaves your bank account. That is just life. And so coming to terms with that, and I'm more of a saver, right? So being able to release control of, I want 30 grand in my bank account. We're nowhere even near that, right? Like, and just being at peace with, okay, I've got what I need to make ends meet. And for me, it's not really about money. It's about control and then realizing it's never going to be enough.
Yeah.
Right. And there's billionaires and millionaires who will tell you that, like, every time they get that next rate, like, I wish it had been more. Or,
One more. Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
my
Well-
25-year-old self could see our 45-year-old income now,
Yeah.
the perspective would totally change.
yeah, at 25 would be like, what?
So,
Yeah.
At 45,
You can't do it with that.
Yeah.
When you sit and have a budget like that every month, when you have to sit and have a budget meeting and say, okay, this is what the budget is this month, really what you're doing is you're sitting and you're re-establishing your priorities every
Right.
month. And you're saying, this is what's important to us, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And at least, I would agree. I think it's very freeing to be given the budget for the things that I manage every month.
Very freeing.
And say, okay, within these parameters, I can take care of what we need to take
so
care
good.
of.
Without guilt, without worry.
Without guilt, without worry.
And you can also see yourself working towards a
Something.
big
Towards your
fun
goals
goal
and your
of a new
priorities.
car
Yes.
or
I've got to
vacation.
look forward
or,
to.
I've got a great friend who he too has done the whole financial peace thing for years and years and years, and he says this isn't about financial accumulation. It's really about financial peace. And so that's the reason why, and again, this is the Dave Ramsey plan, is getting out of debt. It's about freedom. It's about peace.
Right, which is why I asked the question. I assume that's what you would say. But
And what reason I bring that up is, as it relates to our relationship with our spouse, when you have that peace, you're not bringing that stressor
yes.
and that, if you will, weapon. I love the way you talk about that,
Yes.
Chris. When you use the money as a weapon against your spouse, that's just so unhealthy, but it's so common, right?
Yeah.
So that eliminates that weapon from the equation.
Well, and as God followers, the two of us and the six of us, it is our goal to honor God with everything,
That's right.
including
Be
our
good
money,
stewards.
and to honor each other.
Yeah.
And I want to honor you well in spending the money that you work so hard to make,
And vice versa.
and you want to honor me well in the money spending. And so, why would we not?
Yeah.
And also, if you have financial peace, if you have your finances in order, then if a health crisis comes along or a job loss comes
Yeah.
along, then you have a health crisis, you have a job crisis, but you don't also have a money crisis.
That's right.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
That's good.
it becomes
It's really good.
Instead of a debt snowball, you got another snowball
Right,
happening.
right. And so you can focus on that rather than
Yeah.
having,
That's really
being
good.
torn at the seams by these two things
Yeah.
going on
Can
at
we
the
have
same
really
time.
smart friends?
We did. We're going to try to put a lot of different resources into the show notes for our listeners and for our viewers. I hope that you'll tap into this. Listen, this is not a fun conversation for a lot of you, and I get it. It brings up
And by a lot of you, he means us.
well, it brings up all kinds of different emotions, and I get it. Here's a couple of takeaways that I'm going with. Number one, run toward it as opposed to run away from it. It's never going to serve you well to run away from it.
It'll chase you.
You can't get away.
It'll
right?
chase you.
Yeah, you can't get away.
Face the music.
If you're in trouble, the sooner you come to terms with that and you are engaging people, the better off you're going to be. So whether it be your debtors, your creditors, your whomever it is that you are, if you will, in partnership
The
with.
devourers.
Well, because the last thing they want is for you to not pay them back. So most of them will work with you.
Yeah.
Well, but they're going to work with you
Yeah.
because the last thing, sending it to collections is not a good deal for them. Right? So run toward them. Number 3, if you're not good at this, ask somebody. Ask somebody to help you. I really suck at that. and I admit that. I confess that. And honestly, it's just a part of me that just kind of who you like. But you be humble enough to be willing to say, I need help. And you'll be
really
shocked at
blesses
how many
that, though,
people.
doesn't he? Like it's like he
always
just
does.
unleashes the gates of heaven with all the blessings
He always
and all the help.
does.
He wants us to ask. He wants us
Yeah.
to ask him, and he wants us to ask others for help.
Yeah. What would you throw out to our listeners as we wrap this up today? Parting thoughts.
Just echo everything you just said. I think money is just an outward sign of those priorities, and the two of you working on your relationship through those shared priorities of how you spend your time and how you spend your money are critical to serving each other and serving God.
And deal with what's in your past regarding it, whether it came from your family or your own past bad habits. Like, look that square in the eye and realize how it's affecting you now.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Zach, Lindsay?
I'd say if this isn't something you're already doing, the conversations getting started are probably going to be really awkward and really hard. But the more you engage in hard, awkward conversations, the easier they're going to become. And just because it's hard and awkward doesn't mean it's not valuable. And the sooner you can start doing it, the better off you're going to be. It doesn't get better by waiting to start. So I think they say money and sex are like the two most common arguments that you have in marriages.
Sure.
So don't let this be one of them. It's
Right.
a hard, it might be a hard, awkward conversation.
If you have to pick one, let it be money.
Oh no, there are more episodes to come.
Tell them what Dave said about those two.
No, I think Dave's line on that is we don't share it with our children enough. We don't talk about it outwardly enough. So you grow up with, we believe our parents don't have money or sex because we don't talk about it. It turns out they had both. They had sex, apparently. And so it's really important for us to bring our families and all that and help them understand money and what you're doing with our money.
Totally derailed, but go ahead.
I mean, that was it. Just have the hard conversation. It doesn't get better to wait.
So I would go to you can be rich and really unhappy, and you can be poor and really happy. So when I was in between jobs and delivering groceries on the side, some of my favorite people to deliver groceries to were some like mobile home parks, right? And they would be, it'd be like a little dinky $3 order, and then they'd tip me $5, right? Which is, almost 2 times what they right. And then some of the most depressing ones, there would be these people and you wouldn't get their name, but you get their address and you'd be like, I'm gonna earn $30 and they're not gonna tip me, right? And so to your point, money is just an outward expression of an inward reality. And so don't take away from this. I just need to get my finances in order to really pass it off, and my marriage will be happy. Like you have control, we have control over the state of our marriage. I would say more so than we do over money. And so live in that reality of it might be tight, but you can be happy. You could be super rich and be really unhappy.
Yeah.
It's a great nugget. Great takeaway.
So this week's show may be over, but the work has just begun. Be sure to check out the great resources and references mentioned in today's show in the show notes at wearetogetherforgood.com/podcast. It is also super easy to subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. Hey, if this podcast has been an encouragement to you in your marriage and life journey, please let the people in your world know. Help us spread the word about the Together for Good adventure by following us on our Facebook and Instagram pages. This would go a long way to help get the word out. Don't forget to check out our website, wearetogetherforgood.com, for free resources, archived podcast episodes, and other ways you can experience a life and marriage that is together for good.